Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Dr. Sam Meisler, CEO of the PetWellClinic franchise opportunity. The PetWellClinic is a walk-in veterinary clinic providing excellent preventative, wellness, and sick care for dogs and cats on an on-demand basis. We're going to talk to Dr. Sam about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
Are you one of those special people who are willing to go after your dreams and goals? Are you ready to fulfill that dream of owning your own business with the security of a proven brand? The opportunity to take control of your future and own a Rita's Italian Ice franchise is within your reach.
Rita's is seeking success-oriented individuals who are ready to make a change in their life, and Rita's offers unparalleled training and support to assure your success. And did you know the frozen treat industry is a recession-proof industry, and there are Rita's in 23 states currently with 540 stores open. Rita's Italian Ice has been around for 25 years and is listed as a top-performing franchise by the Wall Street Journal.
Now here's the really good part. Rita's Italian Ice is a unique and amazing taste treat. It's smoother than a snow cone, and it combines ice with real fresh fruit. The real fruit adds dramatically to the taste, and it comes in over 40 flavors. The ice and fruit are mixed on site and made fresh daily, and it is delicious.
You'll want to know more about this exciting and successful franchise opportunity. Go to www.ownaritas.com and get all your questions answered. That's www.ownaritas.com to take control of your dreams and future today. You don't want to wait any longer to be a part of this adventure. www.ownaritas.com.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Dr. Sam Meisler, and Dr. Sam is the CEO of the PetWellClinic franchise opportunity. And PetWellClinic is a walk-in veterinary clinic providing excellent service, preventative, wellness, and sick care for dogs and cats on an on-demand basis. Hi, Dr. Meisler. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Marty, and thank you for having me.
This is my pleasure. We always like to ask our guests, where are you calling from today, Dr. Meisler?
I'm calling from Knoxville, Tennessee, where we started our first PetWell clinics.
That's fantastic. Maybe, we've been doing this show now, Sam, for about another 14 years. We're coming up on like our 750th show. And, one of the things that we've learned is that, every business or every franchise has a story. I thought, maybe we can go back and you could talk a little bit about your veterinary background and really your inspiration for PetWellClinic.
Sure. I've been a veterinarian for many years, and my source of inspiration for becoming a veterinarian probably leads back to my childhood. Grew up in East Africa around a lot of wildlife, a lot of domestic animals, and just loved being around them. Went to vet school. There's some pertinence to my story. In high school, I actually learned how to program, and this is dating myself. We actually had to use punch cards, to type in our code,
Sure.
hand them to the teacher, they'd walk them
Yes.
to the university. But that is important to the PetWellClinic story because we have our own software and that's part of the piece too.
Right.
But in the veterinary world, I've always enjoyed doing everything from zoo work to even my first job was working with mostly Amish clientele. So I really enjoy just variety and openness and just doing a lot of different things. And that's kind of my background, obviously business background as well. But that gives you kind of a background of where I come from.
Did you know, Dr. Meisler, I mean, at a young age also, so you knew, you were drawn to animals. I was curious, when I was reading about your background, did you know that you had this entrepreneurship in you or in your blood? I mean, did you see yourself doing this at a young age as well as, like one day franchising a concept?
At a young age, probably not. I'm just focused on, I do have a journal where I think I wrote, I'm 9 years old. I have a tortoise, a dog, a hedgehog, and I want to be a veterinarian. But the entrepreneurship part came later. It always fascinated me just as far as creating things and such and then executing on them.
Terrific. How would you describe the PetWellClinic to a prospective franchisee, Dr. Meisler? I mean, if you were like at a franchise show and someone came up to your booth, and common questions always, what do you do? How do you typically respond to the question?
Well, it all goes back to our brand promise. We're walking veterinary clinic, open to you, kind to your pet. And from the franchise perspective, we're very scalable, and it's a very complex industry, the delivery of veterinary medical care to animals. And we've removed the services that are very complicated and focused on services that we can, deliver extremely well. Right. And at the same time are pretty simple to deliver. We also leverage technology so that clients can have that more human interaction with the team. So we use technology for items that will save time, but not at the expense of that human interaction. And also from the outside, other than, going through a hedge fund or opening up your own veterinary hospital with, sort of your local vet and doing on the local level, which is really hard to get into. This is a way to get into such a great industry from the outside. So.
Your franchisees or, your future franchisees that you'll be looking for, Dr. Meisler, I mean, will they have to have a background? Do they have to be a veterinarian or could they be an entrepreneur? I mean, how does that work?
No, it's a great question. We are focused actually primarily on non-veterinarian multi-unit franchise operators.
Oh, interesting.
And we're looking at them from, the first filter is from a values perspective to make sure they fit our values, and then how they operate. And we have quite a few that have come in that are just great franchisees. Really excited to be around them.
That's terrific. It's interesting, Dr. Meisler, because I've always not joked, but just observing the pet, as I grew up with dogs my whole life, and at some point, I married my wife and she was very allergic to pets. So then I didn't have a pet anymore. So, I mean, I have experience, but it's just interesting, to watch the elevation of the pet in society, isn't it? I mean, that you see, people going into stores with their pets or the bank or, in the old days, I mean, I'm thinking back like when I was like 7 or 8 years old, a lot of times, the dog would be in the backyard and they have the dog house and things like that. Today, I mean, you have dogs and cats even taking pictures. Like I had a friend who got married recently, and she insisted that the dogs be in the wedding photos, with the family because they're part of the family. So it's interesting that, the pet has certainly evolved in society, haven't they?
Absolutely. And over the years, we've elevated the pet to being, a member of the family, as it should be. So,
right, of course. Absolutely.
And my father is a great example of the evolution. He's since passed away, but he grew up in the Bronx. He never had a pet. He traveled a lot, so early on we didn't have a lot of pets initially, but later in life, as he was retired, he got his dog Tiger in his 70s, I think. And I would hear about Tiger literally every day. My dad would call me and give updates on all kinds of things that are going on with Tiger's digestive system, the whole bit. But so they're the empty nesters. They're the younger generation who are putting off having children until later. And then people are just, for their families, it seems to be a big part of it. And COVID, too, has obviously, the pet ownership has just boomed.
It's interesting, Dr. Meisler. My father also, he grew up in the Bronx as well. It's interesting the commonalities, you and I have. But, you mentioned COVID, and I think that's interesting because the theme last year of our show, of course, we couldn't do a single show, without talking about, COVID. I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about, how the pet wellness industry has changed in the light of the pandemic.
Yes, COVID essentially boosted demand way up, and a lot of the full service hospitals are they're trying to screen for the more serious patients coming in, and so they don't have time for vaccines for the ear infection and such. So that's been very helpful to us. It was already happening a little bit beforehand, but that's just been huge to sort of accommodate the surge in pet demand, or pet ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting how you were mentioning too, Dr. Meisler, that during COVID, I'm sure that pets were very helpful to people, weren't they? In getting them through that tough time.
No, in working remote and being by yourself and your human to human interaction way down, and the pet's just there. And when you're down or feeling lonely, the pet's unconditional love, and there's such great companions. They also give people a chance to get outside and take their pets for a walk and see the world when they were mostly confined. So.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's well said. Maybe you could talk about, the benefits to veterinarians working with PetWellClinic, Dr. Meisler.
Sure. That's a big thing we focus in on as far as the whole business model. Yeah. What we offer to veterinarians, typically veterinarians in the full service hospitals are very stressed, and with COVID, even more stressed. And I'm sure there have been a lot of veterinarians even dropping out temporarily. But veterinarians' typical day is they are everything. They are the radiologist, the dentist, the anesthetist, the surgeon, the internal medicine person, and they're handling multiple patients at a time, and they're backed up. A lot of stress, a lot of pressure. It's pets. People have enormous emotional bonds and things tied up, but there's also very little insurance, so money enters into that factor. And their shifts are long. So what PetWellClinic offers is a shorter shift. Typically, we're open 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and it's on demand. So they service the pets coming in, and they do it one at a time. We have a maximum of 2 exam rooms and a maximum of 1 doctor per location. So they do it one at a time, focusing on those patients and just move them through. They're not trying to juggle multiple areas, and they don't have to be that surgeon and the internal medicine specialist at the same time. They're really just akin to, your family doctor. So your family doctor doesn't do surgery and all that kind of thing. So we're trying to bring that back, and the vets that we have working for us are very, I would say, very content. And a lot of stickiness to the job, from the perspective of the franchise owner. Once they find a veterinarian, they're able to keep them.
Right, absolutely. And it sounds like, some of the differences, I guess, PetWellClinic versus, other, veterinary services out there, you hit on a lot of them. But I guess, it's a walk-in too, isn't it? As you mentioned, Dr. Meisler, right? There's no appointment necessary for someone to come in. They could just basically walk in, can't they?
Yes, that's a key feature.
Yeah.
It's on demand. They walk in, and we try to make the walk-in process as easy as possible for the client. So you can imagine,
right?
You're coming in with your dog. You can't always control what your dog or cat does. But you get in line. You can get in line from home. We save your spot in line, so if you don't get there in time, you don't have to, rush to the clinic. You can check in, step outside, take the dog for a walk, keep an eye on the line. And it's a very open concept, too, so the clients in the waiting room get to see everything that's going on. And it does make you feel as a client like you're part of the process, and you see people working, so you don't feel the wait, if there is a wait. Generally, our waiting times are very low.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I imagine, too, Dr. Meisler, that, more people today, we were talking about, the past, how the pet is elevated in society, but, that more pet owners, I guess you said, are concerned about, that preventative, right? I mean, it's good to have your pet checked up. I don't remember doing it so much when I was, in the younger days of, a lot of times you would take your pet to, or we would anyway, when it got sick, or she got sick. But, today it just seems like as more people are focused on that preventative part of for their animals, aren't they?
Yes, preventative care is extremely important, and clients are much more educated on what they should have for their dog or cat, and there are diseases that emerge. Flu, influenza virus for dogs is a newer thing in the last 5 years or so, and there's a vaccine for it, and so. There's just so many things that people just feel good about taking care of their pets and keeping them healthy. So that's a key part of the concept.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I imagine you have hundreds of stories, that you've acquired over the years, Dr. Meisler. What would you say is the most rewarding part of your work?
Well, for me. As a veterinarian, at my core, I love the human interaction. I mean, you have to. I'm a veterinarian, but you have to love people, and that's the key. That's what it's all about. And going to work, and when in the open concept, you're part of the whole process. So when the client comes in, you see them and you can greet them along with your staff, and it's just That's just the greatest part of it. From the business point of view, I love solving problems, and both as far as the software side, but also as figuring out ways to deliver care and how we choose a particular service to offer, whether it fits in certain parameters. And I love that, solving problems to figure out ways to think outside of the box to deliver the care. That's just very rewarding.
That's wonderful. So I can ask you the next question, Dr. Meisler. I mean, what are the company's plans for the future? I mean, if you can look into that crystal ball, 3 years, 5 years down the road, I mean, where do you see PetWellClinic?
Sure. Our primary focus at the moment is just in terms of growth, and it's also one of our values. And then as things come out with newer technologies with regards to pet care, we have to look at how can we deliver that product. Everything we look at in terms of how it will affect the line, the queue, the people in line, whether it takes too long, then that's something we shouldn't do. But there are going to be a lot of things coming on board in general in the industry, telehealth, different technologies that can do diagnostics on the spot, and we have to look at that. But our primary focus is expansion, getting it out there. Communities are enormously receptive to us when we come into town, so that's the primary focus.
That's fantastic. And how many PetWellClinics are currently open, Dr. Meisler, and where are some of the new locations that are opening?
At the moment, we have 6 open totally.
Okay.
4 of mine in Knoxville. I have our first franchisee in North Knoxville, and then the Union, New Jersey one opened in May.
Oh, wow.
And they're off to a great start. Better start
great.
than we had in Knoxville, for sure. Yeah. And then we have 2 in Colorado that will be opening in the next 6 months, 2 in Florida. Hopefully it's looking like Manhattan's looking good, and New Hampshire's looking good for the next 6 months as well. And plans in the works, Pittsburgh as well. We have 2 locations that are in the middle of the build-out process.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. That's exciting. So from everything you've learned up to this point, Dr. Meisler, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise, and I guess even more specifically, a clinic of their own? You know, there's so many franchise opportunities out there today, and we've learned over the last 14 years that, many people that listen to our show, they know they want to get into franchising, but they don't know where to begin, so there's a little confusion there in the early stages. So from everything you've learned, what advice would you give to our listeners in the quest to buy a franchise, and even more specifically, their own clinic?
Sure. Marty, thank you for asking that question, because I think it's so important to choose something, one, that you're passionate about,
right,
something that fits in with your interests. Also has to be a good business model, but with us, it's all about values. So I think, looking at any system, the values part is key. And I know not all systems are values-based, but we're heavily values-based, So, and then looking at the clinic, if they're passionate about it, we believe we have a really excellent business model. And if they're passionate about it, I really feel good about the future for them.
That's terrific. That's great. What's the best way, Dr. Meisler, for our listeners to get more information on PetWellClinic? Of course, there's the franchise opportunity, but even the service itself. Are there any numbers or websites you can kind of direct them to get more information?
Yeah, the best place to go to is PetWellClinic.com, and then you can, as far as franchising, you can click on the franchising link there. Okay. And then we'll get in touch with you.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you today, Dr. Meisler, and I'd like to invite you back in the next year or two as you continue to grow, because I think this is an interesting and great franchise concept.
No, thank you, Marty. I'd love to be back, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meisler. This has been my pleasure. We'll be right back with more franchise interviews.